Hello my subscribers, thank you for watching this video, and in this video I want to talk a little while about Taiwan. I want to abstract from Ukraine and from other conflicts, issues, sanctions, and just to come to actual news about Taiwan. You know that Mr. Xi Jinping is talking a lot about Taiwan to return and so on to its own harbor, to the bird mother of harbor, and so on. And now I want to tell you about the conflict, the history of conflict, and to express my own mind on the happening things. Okay, let's start. So what's behind the China-Taiwan divide? So, whether it's a bluff or a genuine threat of invasion, the increase in Chinese military activity in Taiwan over the last few months has caused global concern. At the heart of the divides is that the Chinese government sees Taiwan as a breakaway province that will eventually be part of the country again. Many Taiwanese people disagree. They feel they in effect have a separate nation, whether or not independence is ever officially declared. What is the history of the tension? So, going back to the beginning, the first known settlers in Taiwan were Austronesian tribal people, who are thought to have come from modern-day southern China. The island seems to have first appeared in Chinese records in AD 239, when an emperor sent an expeditionary force to explore that area, something Beijing uses to back its territorial claim. After a relatively brief spell as a Dutch colony, 1624 to 1661, Taiwan was administered by China's Qing dynasty from 1683 till 1895. From the 17th century, significant numbers of migrants started arriving from China, often fleeing turmoil or hardship. Most were Hoklo Chinese from Fujian province, or Hakka Chinese, largely from Guangdong. The descendants of these two migrations are now by far the largest demographic groups on the island. In 1895, Japan won the First Sino-Japanese War, and the Qing government had to cede Taiwan to Japan. After World War II, Japan surrendered and relinquished control of territory it had taken from China. The Republic of China, one of the victors in the war, began ruling Taiwan with the consent of its allies, the US and the UK. But in the next few years, a civil war broke out in China, and the then leader, Chiang Kai-shek, troops were beaten back by Mao Zedong communist armies. Chiang and the remnants of his Kuomintang government fled to Taiwan in 1949. This group, referred to as mainland Chinese, and then making up 1.5 million people dominated Taiwan's politics for 1.5 million people dominated Taiwan's politics for many years, even though they only account for 14% of the population. Having inherited an effective dictatorship facing resistance from local people resentful of authoritarian rule and under pressure from a growing democracy movement. Chan Son Chan Chin-kuo began allowing a process of democratization. President Lee Teng-hui, known as Taiwan's father of democracy, led constitutional changes towards a more democratic political layout, which eventually led to the election of the island's first non-KMT president, Chen Shui-bian, in 2000. In 2000. So, the thing of the hostility is, I want to tell you about this now. Relations between China and Taiwan started improving in 1980s. China put forward a formula known as one country, two systems, under which Taiwan would be given significant autonomy if it accepted Chinese reunification. This system was established in Hong Kong to be used as something of a showcase to entice Taiwanese people back to the mainland. Taiwan rejected the offer, but it did relax the rules on visits to and investment in China. In 1991, it also proclaimed the war with the People's Republic of China on the mainland to be over. There were also limited talks between the two sides, unofficial representatives. Though Beijing's insistence that Taiwan's Republic of China (ROC) government is illegitimate meant government-to-government meetings could not happen. So, in 2000, when Taiwan elected Chen Shui-bian as president, Beijing was alarmed. Mr. Chen had openly backed independence. A year after Mr. Chen was re-elected in 2004, China passed a so-called anti-secession law stating China's right to use non-peaceful means against Taiwan if it tries to secede from China. Mr. Chen was succeeded by Ma Ying-jeou, who after taking office in 2008 sought to improve relations with China through economic agreements. 8 years later, in 2016, Taiwan's current president, Tsai Ing-wen, was elected. She leads the Democratic Progressive Party, which leans towards eventual official independence from China. So after Donald Trump won the U.S. election in 2016, Ms. Tsai spoke to him on the phone, a break with U.S. policy set in 1979, when formal relations were cut. Despite the lack of formal ties, the U.S. has pledged to supply Taiwan with defensive weapons and has stressed any attack by China would cause grave concern. Throughout 2018, China stepped up pressure on international companies, forcing them to list Taiwan as a part of China and their websites, on threatening to block them for doing business in China if they failed to comply. With Tsai won a second term in 2020. By that time, Hong Kong had seen months of unrest, with protesters demonstrating against the mainland's increasing influence, a development many in Taiwan were watching closely. Later that year, China's implementation of a national security law in Hong Kong was widely seen as yet another sign that Beijing was becoming more aggressive in the region. At the same time, the US has been intensifying its outreach to Taiwan and pressing, uh, excuse me, and reassuring Taipei of its continued support. So, in September 2002, Washington sent the highest level State Department official in decades to visit the island. Beijing strongly criticized the meeting, warning the US not to send any wrong signals to Taiwan independence elements to avoid severe damage to China-US relations. During the controversial visit, China conducted a five-fire military exercises in the waterway that separates the island from the mainland. This, in 2021, President Joe Biden's administration has said its commitment to Taiwan is rock solid, in quotes. In the first few days Mr. Biden's presidency, Taiwan reported a large incursion by Chinese warplanes over 2 days. Then, on 12th of April, the Taiwanese government said China flew the largest number of military jets into its air defense zone for a year. In response, U.S. Admiral John Aquilino, head of the Pentagon's Indo-Pacific Command, warned that the Chinese invasion of Taiwan is much closer to us than most think. So, who recognized Taiwan? There is disagreement and confusion about what Taiwan is. China regards Taiwan as a breakaway province which it has vowed to retake, but by force if necessary. By Taiwan's leaders say it is clearly much more than a province, arguing that it is a sovereign state. It has its own constitution, democratically elected leaders, and about 300,000 active troops in its armed forces. Chiang Kai-shek's Republic of China government, which fled to mainland to Taiwan in 1949, at first claimed to represent the whole of China, which it intended to reoccupy. It held China's seat on the United Nations Security Council and was recognized by many Western nations as the only Chinese government. But in 1971, the UN switched diplomatic recognition to Beijing, and the ROC government was forced out. Since then, the number of countries that recognize the ROC government diplomatically has fallen drastically to about 15. Given the huge divide between these two positions, most other countries seem happy to accept the current ambiguity whereby Taiwan has virtually all of the characteristics of an independent state, even if its legal status remains unclear. So, how do people appreciate their freedom and independence in Taiwan? While political progress has been slow, links between the two peoples and economies have grown sharply. Taiwanese companies have invested about $60 billion in China, and up to 1 million Taiwanese people now live there, many running Taiwanese factories. Some Taiwanese people worry their economy is now dependent on China. Others believe that closer businesses ties make Chinese military action less likely because of the cost of Chinese own economy. A controversial trade agreement sparked the Sunflower Movement in 2014, where students and activists occupied Taiwan's parliament protesting against what they called China's growing influence over Taiwan. Officially, the ruling DPP still favors eventual formal independence for Taiwan, while the KMT favors eventual reunification. The situation is almost the same as Ukraine and Russia. Some in the Ukraine in the East region say they are with Russia, but western part they are called left bank over the river of Dnieper, say that they belong to the West and they feel like a part of European Union. So, but we're talking about Taiwan right now. So, in March 2021, March in 2021, opinion poll commissioned by the Taiwanese government shows that currently the majority of Taiwanese support the DPP government's approach in safeguarding national sovereignty. More and more people also say they feel Taiwanese rather than Chinese. Almost the same situation with the Ukraine, who say they feel more Ukrainian rather than Russians. But okay, in the 2020 election, Ms. Tsai won a record-breaking 8.2 million votes that was widely seen as a snap to Beijing. So, in this video, we have talked a little while about Taiwanese-Chinese conflict. So now my thoughts to it. China is now observing and watching with their eyes open on a Russian-Ukrainian conflict and see how Russia is trying to occupy the whole territory of Ukraine. And then I don't know what we'll do. The Communist Party sit now and think, so what are the consequences of this attack on Ukraine by Russia? And so what will we face if we attack Taiwan and will make the reunification of the region? And so Xi now has a chance to capture this territory. So, and that means he will have iPhone chips, then HTC company, which is specialized on the phones and pretty good high technological company, and it will also get American devices to produce its own microelectronics. But if it starts military operation, I'm not sure if all these won't be burst or something like this, or destroyed during this operation. So I suppose China will lose from it, but it's better to make more stronger economical connections with Taiwan rather than attacking it. So in this case, many Taiwanian people would go to China to develop their economy. It's like a special region, special Chinese region who help China to get high technologies, not forcing them, but just trying to invite them I suppose this is the better way to do with this. And if it's not attack, and if China says, "Will not attack," well, we want good relations with Taiwan and want to strengthen our economical, um, how to say, economical connections. That would be a better way for China. It will benefit more and will not be imposed by Western sanctions as Russia has now. And I suppose Russia has to uh, pull out its military of Ukraine to get a normal life here. But many Russians doesn't matter about them, doesn't care about them, the sanctions. But let's say they're, how to translate that, not pleasant, let's say this way, for us. So this video was pretty long, and thank you for your attention. I hope you liked it, and so peace to everybody and have a good day.